So in the last class, we reached in this particular equation, which is for number of particles or number of electrons, which is emitting with momentum p, and that will be given by this equation. So number of electrons with the momentum p can be find by using this equation. Uh, so and if you plot that uh, number of number of electrons with momentum p versus p, that is like this. So then you can have that momentum distribution or electrons with the momentum of p distribution along with p. Okay, so this we already discussed in the last class, and from that we can have this relation, that is, if you take this p square and f, that is a Fermi function, to the other side, then you can write n of pe, that is number of electrons with momentum pe, divided by f into pe square, which will be proportional to p, what is that, Newton, p nu. So the this dpe dpe get cancelled each other. So this is the relation, and c1 is a constant, we can say c dash. So it's a constant, and remaining terms will be, we can relate like this, that is n of pe by f pe square is proportional to p nu. And we again found that p nu, which is proportional to q minus e. As you can see from here, you can substitute E nu, which is P nu C, that is energy of um, neutron, sorry, energy of neutrino, which is coming out of the beta decay. And this is for both neutrino as well as antineutrino. So I'm just taking neutrino here. So that antineutrino will be coming with electrons, and neutrino will be coming with positron emission. So this, when you are having negative beta decay or electron emission, you will be having antineutrino here. If you are having positron emission, then you will be having neutrino here. So this is for just representing and doing this neutrino. So for the different decay processes, you have to represent it in that form. So for neutrino energy, we will be having P nu into C, that is momentum of neutrino into C. That will give you that the total energy minus what is the kinetic energy of electron. So that will be taken away by this neutrino, that will use as neutrino's kinetic energy. So it will be Q minus E. And that P nu, then we can say that P nu, this P nu, that is proportional to uh, Q minus E, because this is a constant. And if you take this to the other side, then you can say P nu is proportional to this term. So Q value also is constant, so it is only dependent on EE, which is the electron energy which is coming out of the decay process, or the positron. And when I am saying electron, this is also applicable to the positron emission. So electron or positron which is coming out of the decay processes, that is that energy, that is E. So the momentum of neutrino which is dependent on that energy. Okay. So if you consider that, then we can say that P nu is proportional to your kinetic energy of electron, and from that we can say that n of p, okay, we have P nu square here. So from this we can have root of n of pe divided by f into pe square. This will be proportional to P nu, and that means that root of n of pe divided by f of, FPE square, that will be proportional to, so P nu is proportional to this term. So this will also proportional to minus EE. So if you plot this root of NP by FPE square against your kinetic energy, so this will give you a shift in your spectrum. So if you plot this value, so I can say that in general it will be n of p divided by f of fpe square versus kinetic energy of your um, electron or positron which is coming out. If you plot that, then you will get you will get a straight line. So you can understand that from this relation when you take this thing. Okay, so from this, this can be treated as some constant times this part. Okay, so that means that it will give you a straight line equation. Okay, so it is like y equal to mx plus c or something. So that c will be your shifting part. Okay, so if you are plotting for let's say some ee plus m is c square, so this is the mass energy of electron which is coming out, and this is the kinetic energy of electron. So this will make a shift in your straight line, but the total scenario will be the same. So it is like y equal to mx plus c curve, y equal to mx plus c. So this is the constant part that you can get here, and it will cause the shifting, and the relation still holds as a straight line. So whatever value you are getting here, a constant value which will be used for shifting purposes. But this relation will give you a straight line. So that straight line, that is the graph or plot with between root of n of p by f of p is f into p square versus kinetic energy of the electron. That will give you a straight line, and that straight line is called as Curie plot or Fermi Curie plot. Uh, so that Fermi Curie plot is actually we have derived from the Fermi theory of beta decay. So if it is coming in straight line, from our analysis we see that it has to be straight line. If the Fermi theory is true, then it has to be a straight line. So if you draw for different experimental results, this n of pe by f pe square versus ee square or ee, that is root of the first value, and then you will get a straight line if that holds the Fermi theory of beta decay. Uh, then if it is not obeying that Fermi theory of beta decay, then it will not give you a straight line, because we derived this relation from Fermi theory of beta decay. So if Fermi theory is true, then this relation also will be true. And if you analyze any reaction, and if you get a straight line by plotting this, then you can say that, hey, okay, the Fermi theory is valid for this particular reaction. If you get any other kind of form other than straight line, then you can say that Fermi theory is not valid for this particular beta decay processes. Okay, so that curve or the plot is called as Fermi Curie plot. Okay, from Fermi Curie plot we can say that a beta decay process which is holding or which is following Fermi theory of beta decay analysis. So for that we will consider some experimental result here. So this we also covered in the last class, but this is for some more clarification. So okay, so first one is this. So you can see from this figure, this is also in your textbook, so you can easily get more information from there. You can see that in your crane. This Introduction to Nuclear Physics by Crane textbook. So I will check why this will come. Okay, from this curve for gallium, you can see that from this first figure. So this side we have that root values that we have shown just in that theoretical part. Root of n by p square f. So here we have written like n by p square f to the power 1 by 2. Okay, and here we have the energy term. So here we have given the energy term as Te plus MEc square, where T is the kinetic energy. This Te is the kinetic energy of electron. Okay, so this in our explanation we use the EE instead of Te, so that you can just replace, no problem with that. And plus MEc square is the rest mass energy of the electron. Okay, so that is in your x-axis, that is in the horizontal axis. In this axis, we have taken as Te plus MEc square. So this is just energy. So the equation still holds with MEc square as some constant value of that particular rest mass of the rest mass energy of the electron. But still, the graph is between this root of n by p square f versus the kinetic energy of electron with some shift. Okay, so if you plot the graph with uh, n by p square f, that is root of n by p square f versus kinetic energy, and when that touches the horizontal line, that is x-axis, that will give you the q value. Okay, so that is also you have to note down that when you are plotting with against Te, so where it is touching the x-axis, you will get that q value of your reaction. So so from this curve, we can see that for gallium, for a particular beta decay process, okay. So in this particular species, the transition is coming from just so the nucleus is having a spin of 0 and a parity of plus. We will discuss about these things in shell model in the next module. So just understand this, that the nucleus is having 0 plus states, so which means that it is having a spin of 0, the nuclear spin with spin 0, and parity, this plus is parity, parity is positive. So if this transition is happening from 0 plus to 0 plus transition, so when that happens, then you will be having this beta decay, which is happening in this particular case. Okay, so then we will be having beta emission, and for this particular gamma, for this particular gamma radiations, if you consider the Fermi Curie plot, then we can have this straight. This is the experimental result. Okay, then we can fit that, and you can get a straight line. So which means that these in this particular nuclear beta decay process, we have this relation between n by p square f, which is under root, versus kinetic energy, which is given as a straight line, which means that this particular beta decay process follows Fermi theory of beta decay, which means that whatever terms we used for deriving that Fermi theory and that final expression, that is correct. Okay, so there is no correction required for this particular experiment. and this is valid. For gallium, the Fermi theory of beta decay follows. But in some cases, if you consider the next diagram here, so in this particular case, we have a different kind of plot. So for example, if you consider here, this is for yttrium. Okay. So when yttrium, this is also yttrium decays into zirconium. Okay. So this is the Fermi Curie plot of yttrium, which is decaying into zirconium. Okay. So when yttrium is decaying into zirconium, plus we will be having some beta decay along with this process. So we had to analyze what will happen. This particular case, what it looked like when we plot the NP square versus kinetic energy of that beta particles or electron which is coming out. Then if you analyze that particular plot, then you can see that this particular figure, which is not exactly a straight line, which is giving you some kind of nonlinear form. Okay, so it is not a straight line, so we can have some shape in this particular form. So it is coming like something like this. So it is not giving you a straight line. So this is for the case of when you are having beta decay with zirconium, which is sorry, yttrium, which is decaying into zirconium, and you will be having some beta decay here also. So this is some positron decay, that is beta plus decay. So we can have E plus some neutrino. Okay, if you consider the full reaction, we can say 91 here, then 39 of yttrium, which is decaying into 91. So there will not be any mass number change, but the atomic number will decrease because we are getting one proton which is converted into neutron. So this will be 37. Okay. So this is the reaction, and when you plot that root of np square, np square, sorry, root of n by p square f value against your energy, then get a different kind of plot apart from this straight line. So which means that this particular reaction do not follow, this particular reaction do not follow the Fermi theory of Fermi theory of beta decay. So what you have to do? So there is some kind of correction that we have to do in Fermi theory analysis in order to make this reaction also following the Fermi theory of beta decay. Okay. So whatever equation that we have derived so far is not enough to explain this particular beta decay, because it is not giving the exact form that we have derived for the Fermi theory of beta decay. So then we introduce another term in your Fermi theory analysis, which is the shape function. Okay, which is not that much important for you, but when you include this shape function, so we already had different terms in your expression already. So if you look at here, for the case of n of PD. So we have PE square, P nu square dPe. This is momentum of electron, momentum of neutrino, and then you also have a Fermi function which we used for which we used to make the average behavior of that n of p versus kinetic energy graph, which is similar to that experimental result. To make that similar or same as the experimental result, we introduced this function, that is the Fermi function. And no, this is not enough now. This is not enough. So we need an additional term with this that should be produced with the S, and this S is your the shape function of that particular beta decay. process, and that will give you the straight line. So once you include that shape function also in your Fermi theory analysis, then you can make this curve into a straight line when you plot that n over p square. You are having p square f. Now you have that shape function also, and then you take that root, and if you plot that against the energy, then you get a straight line. Now it is complete. Now it is coming exactly as the experimental result, and this shape function will provide you additional freedom to manipulate this small correction that is in Fermi theory analysis. Now that means that with the shape function you can change that deviation of this particular different beta decay processes which do not follow that straight line, that you can change into straight line by addition of that shape function, which means that we need that shape function also in our Fermi theory of beta decay process. Then only that whole equation is fully valid for and which is following the experimental result exactly. So that is what it is about this shape function of particular beta decay, and which is dependent on your P and Q values, that is the momentum of the electron and also the neutrino. So here the Q is neutrino momentum. So it depends on these values. That shape function depends on the momentum of the electron and neutrino. And if you fit that, if you multiply that factor also along with your Fermi theory equation, then you will get exact straight line when you plot this term with energy. So now the Fermi equation will become like this, and you can, if you want, you can write it like this: n of p pe dpe for in terms of momentum. I am saying, so it will be c dash times pe square times p mu square, and dpe times then your function, that is Fermi function, that is d, and then we have kinetic energy of electron, that is the Fermi function. Then this has to be multiplied again with this shape function, which is dependent on actually this is in our case this will come as in our case it will come as p mu so it will come as s of pe p mu. So that is the momentum of electron and neutron. So this will become your the total equation, that is by the Fermi theory analysis, including that shape function. And similarly, you can turn this into energy form also. And so this is the total equation, including the shape function. So now this, if you plot that n of n by P square Fs against the energy, then you will get that straight lines. Okay, so if you plot this value against energy for any beta decay, then you get that straight line, which means that your Fermi theory analysis exactly matches with the experimental results. Okay, so that's about the Fermi theory analysis. We'll be going to some other important topic, which is the selection rule for beta decay process. You can give some settings for that if you need for beta decay NS. Okay, no problem. So here we already seen these two reactions in the previous figures. That first one was gallium reaction that we have shown in first figure here. So this is that one. So this is that equation. This is that decay, gallium decaying into zinc plus positron emission plus neutrino. That is this. Its Curie plot is this. Fermi Curie plot is this. And then we have also seen that we also so that this the yttrium which is decaying into zirconium, that is the second reaction that we consider here. Okay, so this is the second reaction. So in this reaction we do not have any problem because the 0 plus is the parent nuclei spin and parity, and 0 plus is the doctor nuclei spin and parity, and this is allowed by Fermi theory of beta decay. Okay, so this is Fermi theory matches with these experiments, but in this case we do not have that. So Fermi theory match with the experiment in here because uh, it is not giving you that straight line. Okay, without that shape function. So why it is not Fermi theory does not match with the experiment, and you can see that here the the spin of the parent nuclei, which is half, and the parity is negative minus, and the spin of the daughter nuclei, which is pi by 2, and the parity is plus. Okay, so in this particular case, we have a different scenario for the Fermi theory analysis. If you take that Fermi theory analysis only for your for the plotting that Curie Fermi Curie plot and this thing, then we can see that it is not following that Fermi theory. Only if you add that shape function, then only it will give you that straight line. Okay, so if you consider the pure that Fermi theory equation that we used in our analysis before shape function, then it is not following that Fermi theory equation, right? So in that particular case, we analyze what is the difference between these two reactions. Okay. So when you look at that, here we have a transition from the parent to daughter nuclei. So the spin of the nucleus, which is same here for both the parent and daughter nuclei, and the parity is also same. But in this case, when it converts to the daughter nuclei, the spin is initially it was 1 by 2, then it is converted into 5 by 2, and the parity also changes. Now we look a little more deep into this, why it is following Fermi, why it is not following Fermi theory, etc. So that for that we will consider our initial wave function for electron, that is we have given like psi e, which is equal to 1 by root v 1 by root v 1 plus pe, it should be pe dot r by h. I think it's h cross. So if you consider that equation, and then we assumed that this p dot r by h cross, if you calculate, this is almost negligible term, which is coming in the order of 10 raised to minus 3, and we assumed that psi of e is almost equal to 1 by root v. All this we have done in our theoretical that derivation. So, but when you consider the same scenario, when you are having, for example, r equal to 0, if you are having your r value which is 0, and that also result in this condition, that is psi e, which is equal to 1 by root v. Okay. So when your r equal to 0 here, if this r equal to 0, which means that psi e becomes 1 by root e, so 1 by root v. So this is some similar kind of analysis what we have done here. So when we have assumed that p dot r by h cross is very small and it can be neglected from this expansion, and the psi e becomes 1 by root v, we indirectly made that the r value which is equal to 0, which means that both cases we get psi e value which is same. So if you are neglecting these terms, which means that we are approximating with the same result as of that of when you are getting the result with r equal to 0. Okay, so both the result with r equal to 0 and with this approximation are same concept. So which means that when r equal to 0 means that your electron which is formed at the center of the nucleus, or which is uh, in the decay process, which generated at the center of the nucleus. Then it is this r value becomes 0, and the correspondingly the psi e becomes 1 by root v. Okay, so when r equals 0, which means that your angular momentum, that is orbital angular momentum of that electron, will be equal to 0. Okay, so that means so when you take p p dot r by h cross, which is very small, and if you make that psi e equal to 1 by root v by this assumption, which means that you are indirectly making this condition, which means that both will give you the same result. So you are indirectly making this condition, and from that we can see that when you made this psi e become 1 by root v, automatically your angular momentum will become 0, because this term becomes 0, and which is equivalent to when you are substituting r equal to 0. Okay, so and it is very simple when you don't confuse with this r equal to 0, how this angular momentum becomes 0. These are basics that you should know, that when it is forming at the center, then let's say the angular momentum is r cross p, and your r will be 0, which means that your angular momentum is also 0. So that is a simple topic. And if you have some other otherwise you can see like this, if you need any orbital angular momentum, then you need some orbit, you cannot be in center. Okay, so that's a different kind of looking into that. So when your r equal to 0, which means that your angular momentum is 0, and that will give you that indirectly that we have made that condition in our derivation. Okay, so that is the important factor that we have to consider in this particular equation. So when we took that psi e equal to 1 by root v, we indirectly made the angular momentum of that electron equal to 0. Okay, which means that the electron is formed at the center of the nucleus. Now, if you are looking further, you can see say that the neutrino, which is also formed along with the electron. So the electron's angular momentum equal to 0. Then the neutrino angular momentum also had to be 0. So we can have that is also formed at the center, that we also took in the same form. For Newton also we took the same analysis, that is we took psi nu equal to 1 by root v times 1 plus p nu I times p nu dot r by h cross, etc. That will come. So and we took this is almost 0 and negligible, and we made this approximately 1 by root v. So similar analysis we did for neutrino also. So indirectly in that case also the angular momentum becomes 0. So for both outgoing particles, both the electron and neutrino, we have the angular momentum which is equal to 0. So for both outgoing particles, we have angular momentum which is equal to 0. That is that we have done indirectly in our derivation. And now if you take the spin part of that momentum, then the spin angular momentum, which is for electron, which is half, that is fermion, and the neutrino, which is also half, which is again fermion. So if you take both of them with a different combination, plus half, minus half, and all those things, then you will get the total spin value, which is equal to 0 or plus 1. Okay, so if it is plus half and minus half, you will get 0, or if you both of them are become one half, then it is, you can produce that as half 1. So the resultant value of this will give you 0 and 1, that is the spin of that outgoing particles. that will be given as 0 or 1. Okay. Now, if you consider the L value equal to 0, that we already did accidentally or indirectly in our theoretical analysis or the derivation, and that is L equal to 0. We already took L equal to 0 because we assumed the Euler terms are 0 and the psi e value is 1 by root p. That accidentally give you that L equal to 0. Then S is also 0. That is the first value of S. And that will give you J equal to 0. That J will be varying from L minus S to L plus S. So this is the variation of that J value. Then we will get J equal to 0 for both L equal to 0 and S equal to 0. For that particular case, we have J equal to 0. And the angular momentum and parity of that uh, parent and daughter nuclei are the same, which means that J equal to 0, which is corresponds to the outgoing particle, that is the total angular momentum of the outgoing particle equal to 0, that is the J value, right? This is the total angular momentum. I hope you know that. Total angular momentum of the outgoing particles. Okay. So the outgoing particles are having L equal to 0 and S equal to 0. And if you take the total angular momentum of them, when it goes out of the particle, out of the nucleus, then the total angular momentum will be equal to 0. That will give you that the parent and daughter nuclei, which are having same kind of angular momentum and parity, because the angular momentum of the outgoing particle is 0, so it will not affect the angular momentum of the daughter nuclei. Okay. That is from the angular momentum conservation you can see, and which means that there is no change in the spin, nuclear spin of uh, the nucleus, which is parent nuclear, daughter nuclear. There is no change. So the delta I value equal to 0. So there is no angular momentum change between this daughter and parent nuclei. So delta I, that is change in the angular momentum or change in nuclear spin, that will become 0. And the second case, there is no change in the parity, that is delta pi, that is used for change in parity. And there is no change in the parity while this beta decay process. Now, if you consider another case, okay, in this particular case, we say that this transition, allowed means your L value equal to 0, okay, and allowed Fermi transition, which means that it is obeying the Fermi theory, and the transition is followed by the Fermi theory of beta decay. So we can say that these are the allowed Fermi transition. These are the allowed Fermi transition where you are having L equal to 0 and your S is also 0. So this is condition for the allowed Fermi transition. Okay. So you have to understand that and the allowed means L equal to 0 and Fermi means S equal to 0. If S equal to 0, that is Fermi, and if L equal to 0, that is allowed. Okay, now if you consider another case where so in this case you do not have any effect of spin of the angular momentum, spin part of that um, outgoing particle. We do not consider that spin part of the outgoing particle, and then we can have the allowed Fermi transition. But when we have that spin also contributing in the decay process, then we cannot have that Fermi Curie plot. Then we have to include that shape function also when you are having spin value which is not equal to 0. Then that type of reaction when you are having L value which is equal to 0 and S value which is equal to 1, which is means that S is not 0 now there in this case. So your J value can have plus or minus 1 and 0. So J will be in this particular, for example, L equal to 0 and S equal to 1 in this particular case. So J value will be equal to L minus S to L plus S. So it will be minus 1 2 1, so it will be minus 1 0, and plus 1, it will be minus 1 2 plus 1. So these are the j values. Then we'll get j values as plus or minus 1. Okay, that you can see from here. So this is plus or minus 1 comma 0. So these are the j values. Then we can have the delta I. If you take delta I, then there is also this change in angular momentum, that is this 0 and plus or minus 1, because suppose you are having an X nuclei, sorry, your parent nuclei which is changing to your daughter nuclei plus some positron or neutron or anti-neutron, whatever it is. So you have here, suppose you are having angular momentum x, and if when you go to the daughter nuclei, and plus you will be having here plus or minus 1 comma 0 angular momentum, this part, that is the total angular momentum for these outgoing particles. Okay, that is plus or minus 1 comma 0. When it is 0, then there is no effect. When it is 0, there is no effect on your parent or daughter nuclei. But when it's plus or minus 1, plus or minus 1, when it is plus or minus 1, then this should not be like x. Okay, so if it is x, then your angular momentum will not be conserved, because you are having x here and you will be having x plus 1 or x minus 1 in this side, so that is not conserved. So this x should be different. This part we need some x dash, so that will be different from x. So in that particular case, you have a different parity, sorry, different angular momentum for daughter nuclei. And if you take the change in angular momentum between this parent and daughter nuclei, you will get 0 plus or minus 1. Okay, and if you consider the parity, there is no change, because your parity will be given by minus 1 to the power L. So since L value equal to 0, so there is no change in your parity. So this parity will be given by minus 1 to the power L. So initially, what parity you are having, that will be the same as that of the output, because the parity of the um, outgoing particle, that is electron and neutron. For this case, in this case, you can see that L value equal to 0, and we are calculating everything for the outgoing particle. So if L value equal to 0 for the outgoing particle, we will be having minus 1 always to 0, which will give you 1, which means that there is no parity change associated with the outgoing particle, which means that there is no parity change in your daughter nuclei. So the total parity change between the parent and daughter nuclei will be 0, which will give you there is no change in parity in this particular reaction. And this particular reaction, when you are having L value which is 0, still L value equal to 0, but your S value equal to 1, S is not equal to 0, that kind of transition, which is not Fermi transition, because in Fermi transition your spin should be 0, that outgoing particle spin should be 0. So this kind of transition, which is allowed because L equal to 0, which is allowed, but which is not Fermi, that kind of transition, which is called as Fermi, sorry, Gamow-Teller transition. Gamow-Teller transition. So which are allowed Gamow-Teller transition. Now, if you consider any higher order L values, which means that your L is not equal to 0 in this case. So when your L is not equal to 0 here, under this condition, where you have L which is not equal to 0, such kind of transitions are forbidden. Or what we mean by forbidden, which means that which is less probable. And if you say that it is allowed, which means that it is highly probable, or the probability is high that these reactions can happen. But when you consider forbidden, which means that the probability of that kind of reactions are very small. So that forbidden reactions are associated with L equal to L, which is not equal to 0 case, and these are forbidden decay processes, and or which means that they have a very less chance to occur. And if you consider L equal to 1, in the first case. So that is L equal to 1 means that first forbidden. L equal to 2, then it is second forbidden transition. L equal to 3, third forbidden, etc. So if L equal to 1 and S equal to 0, if L equal to 1 and S equal to 0, which means that first forbidden, because L is not equal to 0, which means that it is forbidden. So first forbidden and S equal to 0 means that Fermi transition. So it is first forbidden Fermi transition. If you take L equal to 1 and S equal to 1, then it is first, because first forbidden. So it is first forbidden, which because it is L equal to 1 value, so it is first forbidden. And since it is I think I missed that forbidden here. So it is first forbidden. Okay, first forbidden. And since it is S value equal to 1, it is gamma teller. So it is first forbidden. Okay, I have written here. Okay, no problem. It is first forbidden gamma teller transition or decay process. So that is about that. And then if you consider the L equal to 1 case, if L equal to 1, so this L is associated with the outgoing particles. Okay, remember that is this L is, we are whatever we are saying about L, which is for the outgoing particles. Okay, which means that electron and neutrino. So L value for outgoing particle is now it is 1, which means that there is a parity change. If you calculate the parity, then minus 1 all raised to 1 will give you minus 1. So there is a change in parity. Initially it was not there. Now you get an additional minus 1 parity. If it is 1, then it is not a problem. It is changed now, it becomes minus 1. So there is a change in parity. For there is a parity associated with the outgoing particle parity change. So which means that there should be a change in daughter nuclei also. Okay, then only the parity will be conserved in that reaction. So that is the case. So when L equal to 1, so when L equal to 1, there is a parity change, and this parity change is in with daughter and parity, the daughter and parent nuclei, there is a change in parity. So these are the basic, you can go on for higher terms. For example, if you consider what is L value equal to 1, so if you consider L value equal to 1, L value equal to 2, so L value equal to 1, we have to consider this term, first term, P dot R by H cross, plus if you consider the higher order terms, then you will get to the higher angular momentum terms, L equal to 1, L equal to 2, etc. If you consider all those higher order terms, and you take, for example, psi E equal to 1 by root 2 V into 1 plus P dot R by H cross, and then you can derive the Fermi theory analysis again for that particular case, and you will get the Fermi theory of beta decay with L equal to 1 case. That is that you can calculate, and you can say what is the probability of that that can be possible, and all those things you can calculate from that. And you can include like 1 by root V 1 plus there will be I also. So next term you can consider this whole term, and you can derive again the Fermi theory for the decay probabilities. And similarly that you had to change for neutrino also, and you can derive all the steps that we did for this psi E with 1 by root V alone, and then you can get L equal to 2, L equal to 3, L equal to 4 cases, and you can study what is the probability of that kind of decay processes, all those things. So this is just from some basic understanding of the selection rules for beta decay. So for Fermi beta decay or decays which allows or follows Fermi decay, these are the condition for beta decay processes, that L equal to 0 and S should be equal to 0. So this is the condition, and that will give you delta I equal to 0, and there is no parity change. And in the second case, when you are having spin in your system, then Fermi cannot do that, or that will not follow that kind of reaction. Then you have to take that shape function, all those things, and that will be explained by Gamow Teller, and that S1 S equal to 1 and L equal to 0, which is associated with the allowed gamma stellar transition, and it will give you the change in the spin or angular momentum of the doctrine parity nucleus as 0 and plus or minus 1, and there is no change in parity. And if you go higher L values, there is change in parity, and which are forbidden or less probable transitions. Okay, so that's about the selection rules for beta decay. If we consider, when we calculated for the Fermi theory analysis, we consider the energy of neutrino, as E nu, that is the kinetic energy of neutrino, which is equal to P nu into C. So when we derived that Fermi theory, we consider the kinetic energy of neutrino as E nu, which is equal to P nu into C. Okay, and then we considered the density of states, with this dn by def, that is final states. So it is as c dash times some pe square p nu square, and then we had some dpe, this times dp nu by def, right? So this was the equation that we have used at that time, and we produced from this, we analyzed that dp nu by def. We substitute that dp nu from this. We can say, okay, I will do it in here. Okay, so I will check this here. Sorry. Um, so dp nu by def, and we considered this equation, and we calculated that dp nu by def. From this equation we can get it as 1 by c, because when you take de nu by dp nu, you'll get c. If you take the inverse of that, you will get dp nu by df is equal to 1 by c. So these equations we used, and we substituted this 1 by c for dp nu by def in that Fermi analysis, and we derived all terms. Okay, so we took that into the along with the constant, and we said this is okay. I think that constant is something different. Okay, you just check that. Okay, so that what we did in that analysis. Okay, and now if you consider, it is not in that time we considered that the neutrino with no rest mass, or it is not having any rest mass energy, which is neglected in that time. If we consider that, okay, what we did, we didn't consider that energy. We considered only this kinetic energy of neutrino, and we derived dp nu by df will be 1 by c, and we substitute that in here, and we calculated it like c times p square p some dpe times 1 by c, and we took all these constants with some other factor. Okay, so this is what it did in that derivation. Okay, so now the scenario is different when you consider the rest mass energy of the neutrino. Okay, so in that particular case, the EF value, the final state, or if you consider E nu, okay, so if we consider rest mass energy of rest mass energy of neutrino. Neutrino by mean that both neutrino and antineutrino. Okay, so that is applicable for both. It depends on what kind of beta decay is happening. So in that case, E nu, that is total energy which is associated with neutrino, will come as kinetic energy of neutrino plus the rest mass energy of neutrino, and thus that rest mass energy will be something like p nu square by 2 M, that is M, which is M nu, which is associated with the rest mass of that neutrino. Now, if you take d e nu by uh, whatever that, for example, if you want to calculate the p nu by def, okay. So if you take de from this, if you take def divided by d p nu, okay. So this will give you c and plus what is that? This will give p nu square m nu c square. Okay, okay. So this will come as we'll take that. This total energy will come. 1 minute. So EF is the final state energy that will be associated with MEC square. That is energy which is associated with so mu c square. Okay, that is rest mass energy of uh, neutrino. Then we have kinetic energy of electron. So that is EE. The rest mass energy and E is plus. Then we have P nu square by 2m. So this is the total final state energy. So we'll be having mu c square plus p nu square. Okay. So this will be when you consider the rest mass energy, this can be written as, okay, I will write. Okay. This is not the right form. So we'll consider this. So if you take the final energy, so that final energy will be associated with both the energy of electron and neutrino. So that will come as the rest mass energy of electron, that is MEC square, and plus kinetic energy of electron, then rest mass energy of neutrino, that is M nu c square, and kinetic energy of neutrino. Okay, we can write in terms of when you consider the rest mass energy, then you have to turn that into like this by p square by 2m form. So that's what did here. Instead of p square pc, I wrote like p square by 2m nu. So because we are considering mass here. Okay. So this you can find out by using that total energy equation, E equal to P root of P square C square plus M square C raised to 4, that equation. From that you can find out this M nu C square into P nu square by 2M. Okay, so this is total energy. Now, if you consider the DEF, so we have to consider DEF. Initially, what I did here is that this is also not right. So actually, this is kinetic energy of neutrino that only I have considered here. But we had to derive with respect to EF. Okay, that I don't know whether you noticed or not. So actual equation will be like what I have written here. So it will be coming like EF equal to MEC square plus kinetic energy of electron plus P nu C, that is the kinetic energy of the neutrino. And we have to take differentiation of this one, not this one. Okay, this is just energy, kinetic energy of uh, neutrino. So we have to take that with respect to EF, not with E nu. So P nu with respect to EF, even though it only, this part is only for electrons, only this part will come. That's why the result is okay. That is right. But when you take that derivative, you have to take the final energy of that reaction, that is EF, which is associated with both electron and neutrino. So when you take dp nu by def, that you will get 1 by c, because anyway that EF is dependent p nu only in this term, that p nu c. Okay, so when you take that derivative 1 by c. So similarly, EF, if you consider that is final energy, that is EF will be equal to rest mass energy of electron plus rest kinetic energy of electron plus rest mass energy of neutrino plus kinetic energy of neutrino. Now, if you take dp nu by def in this particular case, then we will get something which is not something which is different. So that will come as let's take def by dp nu. That will come as if you take the derivative of this one, then we'll get 2p nu. That 2 will get cancelled. Then we'll get p nu divided by m nu. So this implies dp nu by def, which is equal to m nu by p nu. So in the previous case, when you substituted that, it was 1 by c. Now it is m nu by p nu. So initially it was 1 by c. Now it is m nu by p nu. So there is some difference that we can observe. Okay, now so after considering the rest mass energy of neutrino, we got a different result for dp nu by def. And if you substitute that value in equation, that in this equation, let's say this is 1. So, and let's say this is 2. So substituting equation 2 in equation 1, which implies what is that d n by def will be equal to uh, some constant times p e square, p nu square. There is no change in that, and the pe also will be there. Only the last term we have to change, that will become m nu by e nu. So I can take this again as this is some constant c dash. I am including m nu also with the c, that is constant. So the rest will become p square, p nu square. Sorry, this nu square will not be there because one p nu will get cancelled. So this square. So there will be only p nu, and so this is the expression. Okay, we'll be having that dpe also. So this is the expression that we'll get after including that rest mass energy of that neutrino. Okay, so now if you consider the equation, okay, that the final equation that you got of with let's say the first case. So you got by using these expressions, okay. So when there is no rest mass, I should write in that form. When when we did not consider the rest mass energy of neutrino, I will just give symbol. So you have to write neutrino, okay. So that will give you that final value of n of t, which is equal to some constant times, I don't know whether c double dash or something I have used. Anyway, it is constant times some root of t, that is e in our case, e times e plus 2mec square, right? And then we had another term t plus mec square Then we have q minus k square. Okay, so this we have derived when if when we have m nu which is 0, or we didn't assumed there is rest mass for that uh, particular nucleus. Okay, so we cannot write like this, but just say that there is, if we did not consider the rest mass energy of neutrino, then this is the expression. Okay. Now, if you consider that expression, then your equation will be something different. How it is going to be different? So that will be dependent on your q square by 2m. So the kinetic energy now the kinetic energy. So along with this, I will write. So the kinetic energy of neutrino will be given by uh, p nu square divided by 2m nu, and this will be equal to q minus ee. So the total energy is q, that is that minus kinetic energy of electron, that will give you the kinetic energy of neutron in this particular case. So from this we can say that q this p nu here, from p nu, this will be equal to root of 2m nu into q minus e. So that is the kinetic energy of neutrino with sorry, p nu with rest mass. But if you consider in this case what we have done, the kinetic energy of neutrino, which is equal to in this case, which is p nu into c, which is equal to q minus ee. Then from that we can get p nu equal to 1 by c times q minus ee, right? So this is different. So this is different from this p nu. So there is difference in p nu value. So when you substitute that p nu in your expression, so initially we substituted this part which is associated with that p nu square term. Remember that. Uh, so that in here, when you consider that, you can see we have substituted p nu square. For this p nu square, we substituted for that value is this. That then we will get q minus e square. That is this term. Oh, okay, this instead of k, it is e. Okay, that's how we got this term, this q minus e. But in this case, it is different. So the difference comes in the final value. Okay, in the especially in the final value. So the value will be, I think it will look like the same terms almost. So n of t. So with rest mass, with rest mass, we can have n of t equal to c double dash or whatever thing I have written here. So e plus 2m e c square. All these terms are same, so there is no change. Okay, is e plus m e c square, and this term, this is different because we do not have p nu square now. Okay, now we have something different. We do not have p nu square, we have only p nu. Initially we had dn by df, that value we have in that term we have p nu square dpe, but now it is only p nu with the addition of if we consider rest mass, we have only p nu. One p nu will get cancelled, so only that term will come. So in that particular case, we have that p nu value equal to this. So if you substitute that, I will write all term. So I should not use these coefficients same. Okay, so I will use some different. Let's say C1. Okay, then I can write this as a root of q minus e. So the difference comes here in this term and this term. Okay, so why I should not write same coefficient? Because when I did when I did this derivation, I got the kinetic p nu value as 1 by c times q minus ee, and I could took square of this to substitute that equation, and I get 1 by c square here, and I added this with this coefficients, this constant, and I wrote that c double dash. But now I do not have that coefficient. What I need, I am having root 2 by sorry root 2 and me. So since I am having root 2 m nu now my constants will be different c dash. So there is a slight difference in the constant value, but apart from that I have a important result here. I am having a different function for this at the last term. Okay, so initially I am having q minus e square, and now I am having q minus e, root of q minus e. So when you take dn by def of these two equations, now if you take a dn by def of first case, then I can write, I will remove these things. Okay. So if you take dn by df, so in this case, we'll get dn of t by df, sorry, dn of de by de with respect to kinetic energy. If you take the differentiation, then you can see that this is directly proportional. So in the first case, if you take this derivative, okay, so in this equation, if you take that derivative, then you can see that dn by def, which is what it will come. So this is proportional. I can say this is or okay. I will do that. So if you take the differentiation, what it will be? So you had to you had to look at this portion. Okay, so first case dn by def, if you take some, there will be some constant, and these terms, if you want, you can consider these terms, or you can neglect all those things, and you have to consider only that the final term. Okay, so if you consider all these bunch of terms as a single term, then we can say that there will be some term with some constant, so that c, and into some. So I should say some different question d here. So this is multiplied with the derivative of the second function. So that is 2 into q minus ee, plus also plus you have to take the derivative of first function. So I will take d by dee times q minus ee square. Okay, so when you take for this term, then it will come dn of ee. So okay, this is e dn divided by dee. So this will give you same concept. We take all these term as d. Okay, here also okay, here I have to use some different because my coefficient is different. Okay, some cd dash or something we can use. Some small change will be there, I think. You just check that whether there will be some change or not, because my constant is different. That's why I'm using this. That is not that much important anyway. So I have some function d dash here, and which is multiplied with what is the differentiation of this? This will come 1 by 2 times q minus e raised to minus 1 by 2. Okay, if you take that derivative, so it will come 1 by 2 times root of q minus e. So there is no difference. I think that is right. Okay, because when you take 1 by 2 here, then it will come as 1 by 2 times n index raised to n minus 1. So it will become minus 1 by 2. So it will become like this. And this is added with the next will be d dash by dee, and which is multiplied with the same function, that is root of q minus e. Now, why this is important? Why this is important? So if you consider the first case, if you consider the first case, that when q becomes e, okay, in this particular case, when that is this case, if you consider when q becomes ee, what is the dn by de value? Dn by de becomes dn by de. This will become, when q becomes ee, this will become 0, this will become 0. So total function, the total value will become 0. So this is 0, which means that the slope will become 0. Okay. So in this case, when you consider the same condition, when q equal to, when q equal to ee, this implies dn by dee, which is equal to, what happens? This term will become 0 when q becomes ee. This term will become infinity. When q becomes ee, this term becomes 0, and 1 by of that will become infinity. So dn by d will become infinity. So what is that means? That means if you take dn by de, dn by de in your that curve, that is n versus ee, and you see that dn by de is nothing but the slope, will be slope of that curve which is coming, whatever the curve which is. So at the end, if you take this curve, so at the end where it is touching that ee, when q value equal to e, at that point we can say, if you zoom that particular portion, okay, that is ee axis here. So that can, when you have dn by de, this is equal to 0, which means that that is that curve is coming and which is going like this. I will use some different color. So which means that at the end it is going exactly parallel to this, exactly parallel to this ee axis, which means that it's almost ending like this. Okay, that's why dn by de becomes 0. So that is a loop because having these parallel lines. Okay? So that is just dy by dx. So if you take change in y, and so in this particular case there is no change in y, so that will give you dy equal to 0. That will result dy by dx equal to 0. Similarly, there is no change in n, which means that dn becomes 0, dn by def equals 0. So that is that the curve will be landing like this at the end point. But when you consider the second case, you have a dn by de, so that is ee, you can say. So this is infinity. That means at that particular case, when you are having that x value, let's say take this is your ee axis, and if you calculate how this curve is coming, so it will be coming like this, and it will be landing like this. Okay, which means that this is almost perpendicular to this axis. Then only you will get that dy by dx or dn, this is capital N, dn by de, which is infinity, because your y value now has some variation, but your x value, uh, dx is going to be 0. That will give you the infinity value. I hope you know these things. So if you calculate any uh, curve, slope of any curve, you have to take these thing, and this is your y-axis, this is your x-axis. You take this point minus this, so you'll get dy. And if you take this point minus this one, this difference, that is your x. So if you divide this you will get slope of this line. Okay, when it becomes 0, it will become 0 only when dy becomes 0, which means that there is no variation in your y-axis, in the curve along the y-axis. So the curve will be like this. So the curve will be parallel to y-axis, which means that there is no change in y-axis y value. So your dy by dx will become 0. And if you have another case where you have your curve which is parallel to y-axis, not the x-axis, so in that case your x do not change. So your dx will become 0. That will result in dy by dx tends to infinity. So that is the case where in this case, and your dn, that n versus ee curve, which end at the end of that curve will be perpendicular to that ee axis. Okay, so this we will look into the some the real case that we have given in the slide. Okay, so you can see from here different scenario when there is m value, that is the m of rest mass of that neutrino, when m nu which is not equal to 0 and when nu which is equal to 0. So when m nu equal to 0, the curve will go, we have plotted, this have been plotted at the end of the curve. This is not the whole curve, so remember that. So this is an expanded view. You can see from here, this is an expanded view of the curve that is already given in your textbook. So that end of that curve is zoomed, and that is shown here. So it is not the, this curve is not full of that curve. It is only on that end of that portion of whatever curve that you have seen here. So this part is zoomed and it is shown here. Okay. So that will come as when m nu equal to 0, when you are having m nu value which is equal to 0, then that curve will be going like this, as you can see, like this, and it is ending at this point where you have your q value equal to ee. So the end of this curve will give you the q value. And this when it comes in case of m nu, this curve is corresponding to m nu not equal to 0, and this is for m nu equal to 0. So if there is rest mass for neutrino, then that curve will come like this till and land like this, almost perpendicular to x-axis. So these are the difference that we can observe. This is for momentum curve, and similar kind of behavior in the energy also. So this number of electrons versus energy, that is kilo electron volt. Here we have kilo electron volt per c, that is for momentum. Okay, so similar kind of behavior can be observed in both momentum and energy curve spectra. So that has to be noticed. So once one can understand that with neutrino mass we have a different scenario as compared to without neutrino rest mass in your Fermi analysis. Now once if you look at this portion of your curve after doing experiment, you can have some kind of prediction about the rest mass of neutrino. Okay, that is the important thing here. So if you look at the end of the curve where you have the q value which is equal to the kinetic energy of your electron, then you can predict something about the rest mass of neutrino which is coming out of that decay process. Okay, so that's all about the beta decay, and I think we have finished all those things along associated with the beta decay. And I have to specify one more thing about the. There can be some kind of minor allegations in the explanation, so you refer the textbook also and other materials. Okay, so before jumping into some conclusions, so I have to do some other clarification for the curve that we plotted. We didn't plot it. We took from internet. I took from internet actually. So this will be like this. So this is your proton number and this is your neutron number. And so when n equal to p or n equal to z, that will be a straight line. And the slope, you can determine the slope and all those things. So I'm not going to that. So it will be like this. So it will be straight line if n equal to p. Okay. So, but experimentally, we observed that it is following this straight line for some nucleus which is having low mass number. Then after some time, it is deviating from this straight line like this. So this is the n equal to p curve where you have neutron and proton which are equal. But in reality, it will not. It is not the same. You will be always having which is n is greater than p when you go for higher mass number. And this is because of that Coulombic repulsive force and nucleus try itself to convert these protons into neutrons, and neutron number will be larger, and that will also increase the nuclear attractive force and reduce the Coulombic repulsive force, and the nucleus will be much more stable. So that is the explanation behind that. So if you consider that you will be having the stability line, which is this. Okay, so these nucleus are stable, and theoretically we thought that this n equal to z will be there for all the nucleus, but it is not the case when you go for higher mass number. So it is deviating for a higher mass number and it's larger than p. And this is the line which is for stable nucleus. Okay, so this line is for stable nucleus. And along with this stable nuclei, there are isotopes of the same nuclei which are having different mass number. So we can say that that isotopes we can distribute like this. For example, if I take this particular point, I take this particular point. Okay, so this is associated with some mass number. Let's say some 50. So the mass number I can take a little more. Some 80 of mass number. So there will be some other isotopes also along with that same atomic number. So I can say that I will take some other. I don't know what is this color. So I will take some other color. Let's take some black color. So there will be some isotopes which is in the same regime like this, above and below that point, which is corresponding to A equal to 80. Okay, so these are the isotopes, and whatever it is coming in this straight line, which is the stable isotope. Okay. Similarly, you can have any of these region, we can have different isotopes along with this stability line. Okay, like this. So that is what we have shown in the first class, I think, first lecture. Okay, so we'll have different isotopes surrounding this stability line, and it will be less in the smaller nuclei size of when the size is large and size is small, but there will be some isotopes. So all these isotopes will try to reduce their nuclear energy and become stable, and they will move to the stability line. And we also shown that where the alpha decay, beta decay, other decay and processes can be possible when you are having very large mass nucleus with very disturbed state. more number of protons like uranium, then they will not try to be stable by just giving some alpha beta decays. They will split itself, and they will try to reduce their size and become stable. And that can be that you can get from that binding energy per nucleon curve, if you consider. For we already did this binding energy per nucleon. So in that particular case, we have something like this, and an overall behavior like this. So whatever it is coming here, which is having very large mass nucleus in this region, will not try to decay. Only they will not try only for decay. They will try split themselves and come back to this position with some reduced mass number, so that their binding energy per nucleon will be larger and they will be more stable. So that is the fission. We will come that we will discuss in the later section also. So that is the fission process. So we already discussed where the fission process, beta decay, by gamma decay, and all those things will happen by using this curve. So this is just a clarification how it will come. That curve is coming in the first place. Okay.